The war within opened with the destruction of Dalaran and what we thought was the loss of Khadgar, but Chris Metzen later told us in an interview that this is just a start and that we will lose some critical characters throughout the entire World Soul saga. With the new expansions, they really want to establish stakes, and seeing that the biggest battle for Azeroth ever is coming, there will be some sacrifices. We're bound to lose a bunch of minor characters, but it's certainly a few big ones will be thrown in the mix. It was hinted that something might be going on with Alleria, Turalyon, and their son Arator. Magni, one of the main characters, might finally meet the Titans and realize who they really are, but it is also possible that some big characters like Thrall could have an end to their storyline in this World Soul saga. Furthermore, Illidan has been confirmed to return in The Last Titan, and he might sacrifice himself one last time. So let's discuss everything we know and the most likely characters we are going to lose throughout the World Soul saga. So while we're talking about all these characters, do you know that you can literally talk to any Warcraft character via the Poly app on your phone? It's an amazingly interesting concept where you can create any character you want, you can provide a backstory, pick a whole bunch of settings, and you got your own personal former war chief Thrall that other people can also talk to. So far, I've created a Thrall and Anduin in this app really quickly, and I've asked them a few questions about Azeroth and what is kind of going on with their lives. The coolest thing is though, there are a lot of options, so you can literally write out the lore backstory that will help make the characters completely authentic, and you can also find a voice that sounds exactly like them, and with the right tweaks, it's a ton of fun. It's amazing if you're a role player. So click the link in the description and use my code DORON to unlock premium features right away, and you can create your own characters. Maybe you can try out Sargeras and ask him how he's doing up there with Illidan and whether he will be returning soon. Check out Poly AI app with my link in the description below. One of the coolest things that recently happened was that Chris Metzen not only returned as the lead story guy, but he also gave us a pretty lengthy interview giving us some pretty big insights into what has really been going on with World of Warcraft and what will be happening in the future. Since the interview is pretty long, of course I'm not going to cover everything, but few key points he noted were that Illidan is going to be returning in 13.0, which is going to be The Last Titan, the final expansion of the World Soul saga. Almost certainly this will have something to do with Sargeras, so it's also almost certain that we will see Sargeras returning as well, and that the Legion was not the end of him. He also talked about how they have a ton in store for the entire Warcraft franchise and how they're planning the next 20 years of WoW. Whether this would be WoW 2 or a bunch of expansions going up to 2040, we don't know, but the good news is they really want to keep the game going. However, something else that he mentioned that I feel like completely slipped under the radar that no one is really mentioning at all is the fact that we are going to lose some very important characters during the next 3 expansions. Chris Metzen was talking about how they really want to establish stakes and how this was lacking in the past few expansions, which is why they decided to do that entire destruction of Dalaran and the Khadgar scenes. War Within really did start with the Broken Shore Light Edition, although I can't really say it was as impactful. I mean, from this perspective, the Broken Shore was crazy. We literally lost the entire encounter, we lost the King of the Alliance, we lost the War Chief of the Horde, we lost Tyrion, and a whole bunch of minor characters. It was pretty devastating. On the other hand, in the War Within, I mean, we did lose Dalaran, but who even knows if we did lost it completely or if it was teleported in a way. It wasn't completely cleared out, and we also lost Khadgar, and he returned and was resurrected like 3 weeks later. I do have a theory that this might not be real Khadgar, but that is really a topic for another video. However, not to push my own thoughts, Chris Metzen said that he certainly won't tell us that we won't lose anybody when asked whether there is a list of characters we are going to lose in the next 3 expansions. The issue is that the franchise has at least another 20 years in store, so losing critical characters is costly. They don't want to go crazy on it, but at the same time, the point is that we really are fighting an existential threat to Azeroth, so almost certainly there is going to be at least a few characters we are going to lose per expansion. So for this video, I want to say, based on the current hints and the possible plans, who these characters could potentially be. It isn't a complete shot in the dark since we know what the remaining 2 expansions will be about, who the critical characters are likely going to be, so it would make sense. They opened up the War Within with the fall of Khadgar, who is the leader of Dalaran, and Dalaran is the opening scene, so it would make sense that Khadgar would be the first victim. Now, I'll try to split them in a few categories, the lowest stake ones, the highest stakes ones, and the ones that are kinda hinted at by the story even now. So starting with the lowest stakes ones. These could of course be a lot of minor characters or half important characters that are going to be present. Like characters that are not exactly that big, but they are established. I mean, think about how we lost Admiral Taylor or Nazgrim. These were pretty impactful, but not like game-changing like Anduin is gone or Varian when he died. These are impossible to list as we have like a million characters, which is why I feel like they're going to start sacrificing them one by one, because WoW's got like 30 books and 1,000 established characters that they can always kind of dig out to bring some significance to the storyline. However, from the more established ones, I feel like we do have a few that are around. First could potentially be Gan Greymane. Gan is a pretty important character, was in multiple books, was in the cinematics, is established since the start of Warcraft with Gilneas. However, he's super old, his storyline was already kind of wrapped up, they got Gilneas back, he's no longer the only one leading his people, so this could be a character that is sort of a safe bet to establish stakes. Everyone will want to know and avenge him, but he isn't like the main focus of the expansion. Now, a second one that I would previously say is kind of low stakes, but with the War Within, not so much, as they're really building him up this expansion, and that is Magni. Magni is currently one of the main characters, but I don't think we will lose him in the War Within, but possibly later down the line. Magni has been in the game for a really long time, and back at BFA he was one of the main characters, and everyone knows who this guy is. They had definitely seen him throughout the quest lines. Now, with the War Within, they're further establishing him. However, I feel like his potential death or sacrifice might have something to do with the Titans and their return and a possible villain arc. Like, he started as the voice of Azeroth and like old dwarves wanting to learn more about their creators, but the more and more the story is unraveling, the more we are realizing that it goes much deeper. The Titans are confirmed to return. They told us this on BlizzCon, and as Iridicron told us, we will see how little they really care about us. I feel like we will learn that they really are enslaving Azeroth, they don't really care at all about their followers, and that Magni might fall victim to this or might sacrifice himself. Like, in the end, he would be loyal to Azeroth and not his own creators, and this death would establish the stakes, and this would also be a turning point. Like, yeah, these guys are definitely not good, and we are not on their team. Of course, definitely a reach at this point with the current storyline, but I do think it is possible in The Last Titan with how much development he's currently getting. Now, I want to discuss 2-3 characters that I feel like are actually heavily foreshadowed by the story right now, that something is going to happen to at least one, and this could be as early as the War Within, but very likely something will be happening in Midnight. This is the entire family, Alleria, Turalyon, and Arator, their son. They're currently really building up the entire Zealotite and Alleria rivalry and the good and the bad side of the Void. Alleria just struck a significant blow to Zealotite by hitting the Dalaran, which really pissed her off, and she has been taunting her about her family on multiple occasions. She's definitely aware that Arator and Turalyon are her weak spots, and this is exactly why I think they are in danger. Losing Turalyon would be huge as he's currently the Alliance leader, but I feel like Arator could be a good target. Arator is the son of Turalyon and Alleria. He's a half-human, half-elf that grew up while his parents spent hundreds of years with the Army of the Light. However, despite his parents being critical characters, he really isn't all that important. This could be a similar storyline to how Gan Greymane lost his son to Sylvanas, and then they built like 10 years of the storyline with him getting revenge, only recently settling it. I feel like something happening to Arator could drive both Alleria and Turalyon insane, and Zealotite might notice and would really raise the stakes. Second character is Turalyon. As I said, Alleria has been taunted with both of them, and Turalyon is now one of the main characters of really the entire game, and he is the king of the Alliance. Of course, we got the entire ordeal with him possibly going bad, but I feel like this could really have something to do with that major battle, the so-called final battle of the Army of the Light and the Void in Midnight. Losing Turalyon would be significant, but it wouldn't be that groundbreaking, as right now he's really just replacing Anduin until Anduin returns back as the king of the Alliance. This could either be a Zealotite raises the stakes, or him sacrificing himself in the battle, as after all, he is one of the main Light guys. Now, on the other hand, we have a few more nuclear options that I feel like are kind of on the table, but who really knows? I'm almost certain we won't lose Anduin because there really is no heir or anyone to take over, and he is keeping his bloodline. However, the other faction might be different with Thrall. Thrall is probably one of the most established characters in the game. He has been a main character since Warcraft 3. He was the war chief, he's now saving Azeroth for like the millionth time. They're building up his family now, but he's sort of in a position where he could potentially be lost. The Horde works without him, he has heirs, and this could have an entire Sourfang or Dranosh type impact. I feel like this would be the hardest decision ever for Chris Metzen, and he's literally his own avatar, but it might break the entire Green Jesus storyline. Personally, I don't think it will really happen, but I do definitely think there is a chance. Lastly, another major character is Illidan. It was confirmed he will return in the last Titan. Most likely this will bring back Sargeras. Of course, it's too early to speculate anything as we have no idea how he will return, but I do feel like he would be a character that would make a ton of impact. Illidan is really on the level of Arthas in terms of popularity. He's also ancient, lived through a lot, sacrificed himself on countless occasions, really cares about Azeroth. He dedicated his life to being the jailer of Sargeras, but now he's probably going to realize that he's been for nothing. So I definitely feel like they could open up the possibility for him to do another big sacrifice or something with Sargeras, and this would really piss a lot of people off and get them invested in the last Titan. Of course, we're still in the war within, so it's way too early to say anything for certain, but losing a few critical characters has been confirmed, so only time will really tell. Thanks for watching. Check out the hints for a new Warcraft 3 game coming out soon by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Perrin and Slavic mythology by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!